This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society of BC, brought to you by Sitka Gear. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Precision Optics. Thank you Sitka Gear and Precision Optics for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems.
Well, good morning, Chuck. Welcome to Talk is Sheep. It's awesome to get you on the cast and talk sheep, I guess, and hunting and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, right on, Kyle. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff we want to chat about today, and we're going to jump into some hunting stuff here at the front end, but for those listeners, we got a really cool, exciting new platform which we're going to jump into, and I'm going to let you intro it, but so let's talk a little hunting to start with, but then we're going to segue right into this new platform that you guys are working on and something that's a really, really cool new initiative that we're excited to be part of.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. So, okay, first of all, Chuck, you're a Wild Sheep Society BC member, longtime hunter, sheep hunter. Let's let our listeners know who the heck is Chuck Peeling and what's your story?
Yeah, well, it's not all that exciting, but I spent the first 20 years of my life in sort of central Saskatchewan, just outside of Saskatoon. So I grew up on a dirt farm out there, and for us, our family, it was all about, hunting deer primarily for meat in the freezer. And as my father used to tell me, we used to say, cows are for cash, deer is for dinner. That was kind of his line. So, I started hunting deer at a really young age, and then moved out to BC when I was about 20, married a pretty farm girl in Saskatchewan, came out here and raised three wonderful kids, and spent the next, I'm not going to count them, but lots of years out in the bush in BC and in the mountains. And all three of my kids are very much into hunting. I've got two that live in BC. My youngest is a conservation officer in northern BC. My middle one, Blake, who's my partner on the Spike Camp platform, he's a BC boy, and then my oldest boy lives in California and comes up every year to hunt. So yeah, I'm very, very big into the hunting scene in our family.
Okay, so you talking my language. You said farm, so I grew up on a farm too. It's same thing, right? Yeah. It was like from the youngest ages, that was what we did. We lived off. We weren't wealthy farmers. We weren't the rich ones with the fancy new trucks. So for us, wildlife and was sustenance, right? We'd go out and we'd all get our deer every year, and that's what kept us fed throughout the winter. And we did have cows, and you're right, cows are for cash and deer's for dinner. I've never heard that, but it's brilliant. So first of all, how close were you close to Saskatoon? You said, what community were you in around?
So, well, if you're familiar with Cody Robbins, I'm sure you've heard.
I've heard of that
him.
Guy. Yeah.
He's kind of a big deal. He's from the Delisle area, and that's where I was. So it's about 30 miles sort of southwest of Saskatoon. Jim Shockey's family's all from that area too, and actually my uncle went to school with some of Jim's cousins and stuff. So that's the general area. So when I grew up there, it was we didn't really hunt a lot of mule deer in that area. It was mostly whitetail, closer down to the river. But it's a great area. Lots of animals out there.
Yeah, right on. And you guys grew up it was your family. Did they stay out there on the farm? Like you left, came to the coast, but is there still the family farm out there? Or what?
No, actually. So my family, we sold our farm when I was probably 10 or 12, and then moved into Delisle, and then from there. The Saskatoon area, and at 20 we moved out. My wife is from a little farther south, kind of down in the Eston Elrose area, Kindersley, and her family had a farm there as well, and she still got lots of relatives and cousins and stuff. So after we moved to BC, I did the Canadian resident whitetail hunt every year for probably 20 years. I would go back last week in November for whitetail out there, and then the Saskatchewan government changed that over to a draw, and unless you have like a direct blood relative, sister, brother, father, whatever, you're stuck in a pool of you're never going to get drawn. So now I just go out. Usually I try to get out there for a goose hunt now, and that's about it.
Yeah, right on. And my understanding out with mule deer out there, you can't get a draw. It's Saskatchewan residents only, unless it's a guided hunt.
That's correct, yeah. And I think the guiding is limited to First Nations, if I'm not mistaken. So even outfitters
Yeah.
can't. There's no real outfitting for mule deer, and that's just absolutely crazy. You go out there, especially in the southern half of the province. I mean, you can drive out in some areas and just dozens and dozens of 200 plus inch mule deer out there, and the cousins will get a draw. I think it's about every 5 years you average a draw out there, and the our family anyway. Those guys are very selective. When that 5 years comes up, they're looking for tanks, and they're just amazing. They're so huge. Same as Alberta though.
Yeah, yeah. Those, you talk about a 350 pound whitetail, and people are like, "Yeah, right." Like they don't even
Yeah,
believe you. But it's like, okay, don't believe me, but just go out there and watch somebody kill one, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So,
exactly.
um,
Yeah,
yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, the
Cool.
grain fed.
Did you go? Yeah, exactly. Did you guys hunt anything else other than whitetail? Did you hunt, like, obviously there's a pretty good moose population out there, and obviously there's elk and all that sort of stuff. Do you hunt anything else out there?
When I was young, so I moved out, like I said, when I was about 20. And in those days, we didn't really see a lot of moose, especially in south of Saskatoon. More so after we left, you started to see more and more of it. And eventually now they're everywhere. They're out throughout the farmland, and they hang around all those old farmyards and, anywhere there's a little bit of bush. And it's pretty easy to get a draw. I think the guys will get a draw out there probably every 2 to 3 years now, I think. So, but no, for us, we were primarily deer hunters. And then I didn't really get into the bigger species till we got to BC.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, same with me. Growing up there, we never seen in our country. And actually, I just grew up just outside of Kindersley. I wasn't too far from where your wife grew up. I was just across the border there in
Okay.
Alberta. And
Yeah.
we never seen any mule deer, elk. And then all of a sudden it just, kind of right when I was leaving the country, it just sort of exploded. Now there's tons of elk and stuff around there, and a lot
Yeah.
of moose too. So, yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. Now, those guys bug me. Like, we'll go on an elk hunt here, 10 days, and we might see one bull, or you call last year and it's over. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you guys do much bird hunting out there at all, or not really? It was mostly big game.
yeah, the bird hunting is the big thing out there. It's especially in the south when the migratory birds come through. It's amazing. Just the skies. I'm sure you saw it where you were from too. Just millions of geese in the air, and the upland hunting is great. Just when I go back now, it's usually 3 or 4 days. We do a big goose hunt, maybe a little bit of upland, and that's about it. But yeah, I do miss that though. That's a lot of fun.
hmm the one thing for me, like, and I've never really, well, I have never hunted Saskatchewan, but hunting Alberta is just the wildlife abundance there. Like, you get out
Oh
there
yeah,
and you just see a lot of animals, right? Like, you'll go out on a mule deer hunt or antelope or whatever the case may be, and you literally see dozens, certainly, but quite often hundreds of animals just on the landscape. It's
it
pretty
really
cool to
is.
see
Yeah,
that
that's
much
that's
activity.
that's what I love it about the most. You get out there and there's never a dull moment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lots to see. Okay, so let's fast forward. So now you came to the coast. As soon as you came out here, did you start hunting right away, or was it kind of took a while to get your feet
Actually, I
under you
started
and
right
get
away.
home?
When we got out here, we'd started a family business in Vancouver. So, we were young entrepreneurs struggling to make a living, so we didn't have a lot of time. So I kind of cut a deal with my wife where I would get 1 week a year. And one of my relatives, my uncle, was a millwright, and he was in Tumbler Ridge. He was out here before we were. So as soon as I got out here and got my hunting licenses all organized, I went up for my first moose hunt ever, and it was in the Tumbler area. We did ATV into the backcountry, and that was quite a few years ago before all the oil and gas really took off up there, and it was pretty remote wilderness where we were, and I ended up shooting a bull on my first trip, and I was hooked. And then from that point, a couple years later, a buddy of mine that was working at the same company as me. He was an older gentleman. He was part of a group of guys that had built kind of a remote cabin in the Caribou, just sort of in this, I guess it was in like late 60s. They built this cabin in the bush, and that was a draw for moose. And I kind of became part of that club, and he was really a mentor to me. Taught me how to moose hunt, how to call them in, how to deal with them, and he was the youngest guy of the group, and at that time he was in his 70s. So that camp had a lot of history, and they had it dialed. They had a shower set up. They had an old truck that they had back in there with winches on it. They just left it there year round. So that really, those years was probably 5 or 7 years that our group would try to pull tags and then get in there. And that really set the hook for me. Once I got into that remote stuff, it was on.
So do you still hunt that moose
You know,
out of that camp, or is that all
I
gone
haven't
with
hunted that camp
over
now
time?
in a long time, and I believe the forest fires got that camp. It's they were logging pretty close to it, and just like everywhere,
Okay.
logging encroaches on some of those spots, especially if there's any kind of road access. I did do a hunt close to that area, just sort of one zone over. I guess it would be 10 years ago. My boys and I did a group hunt with my father, and that was the last moose hunt that he went on. And we stayed up at a cabin at a lake and went out and got him a nice bull on that group hunt. So it was fun.
Cool. Okay, so you talked a little bit about that hunt and that experience and how it's remote, but it's not your typical mountain.
Yeah.
So you're a sheep hunter now. So there's been a graduation. So talk about where you went from there to doing the remote experience to more of not so much having the camp and the trucks
Sure.
and the luxuries that the older
Yeah, so
gentlemen
I can't remember which
you know.
year it was. I want to say it's not that long ago, probably about 2014 or 15. I took my two sons and one of my relatives from Saskatchewan. We actually booked a jet boat hunt through Riverjet, and this is when Kevin Willis owned it. And Kevin transported us in there, and we did a hunt for, I think it was 10 or 12 days, and we just absolutely loved it. And that was our first real remote trip. We were off the Shoshone River, did the Spike Camp hunt into the backcountry. And when we got back to camp and we were being transported out, I was riding up front with Kevin and chatting, and he made a comment to Blake and I at that time. We were both sitting right up at the front of the boat. He said, I drove past your camp every single day at the river, and I never saw you guys once. You guys were always gone. You were in the backcountry. And I think we put on probably 100+ kilometers on our boots, and just busted our asses and came back. And he made a comment to us. He said, "You guys are sheep hunters. You just don't know it yet." And then from there, that set the hook. And I think the following year, my Blake and I and another buddy did a sheep hunt. We did a fly-in hunt out of Region 6. And we were just loving it, every minute of it. And so ever since then, we've been going every year. Blake and I go every year for at least 10 days. And of course, he's young, building his career in business and stuff, so he's only got limited amount of days that he can do it. And so that's kind of how it evolved. So every year now we're on to the opener game. We're doing sheep opener pretty much every year. We're going back this year again. So yeah.
Awesome. You guys doing
We're
a fly?
going to do a
what
jet
do you
boat
got
trip
planned
this
for
year.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. So for our listeners, let's touch a little bit about that. So I've had, some new sheep hunters inquiring about, well, how do you do this? What do you even know? And, this weekend I was doing the Victoria Trade Show, and a guy came up to me and he said, how do you get into sheep hunting? And he goes, I think I want to do a guided hunt. And I'm like, well, it might be a little difficult as a Canadian or as a BC resident to do that, because a lot of the outfitters are, sometimes they'll take you, but it can be tough, right? So, you got to find the right fit. And I said one of the alternatives is you could do get a packer to take you in, or the other one is to have somebody take you up on a riverboat or some sort of on the riverboat, jet boat, and so that experience. So I've actually never done that. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience is like and what's involved with that whole
I've done
process?
fly-ins now, and I've done several jet boat trips. And, they both have their pros and cons, in my opinion. The thing I like about the jet boat trips, when you use a transporter, and realistically, there's only one jet boat transporter unless you're going with buddies. But the nice thing about a jet boat trip is your drop day and your pickup day are pretty fixed. Something really bad has to happen before they're not coming to pick you up. Unlike doing the fly-ins where, the weather is everything, right? So first of all, that's one big advantage in my opinion. And the other thing is, the operators, and if you're a jet boat operator, whether you're a transporter or somebody that has their own boat, and you're familiar with those rivers, they know the area really well. They know the water really well, and it really, sheep can be anywhere. So if you get put into a spot that's known to be a good sheep hunting area, just get your boots on the ground and go. Cover as much ground as you can. You might run into other people with other jet boats that have gone into the same area. You might run into outfitters, but as you know, Kyle, you could be staring at a mountain all day. Two other guys could be staring at it all day, don't see a sheep, and then all of a sudden there they are. So that would be my advice: is like, don't ever think you're in the wrong place when you're sheep hunting. Just get out and keep moving.
Yeah, and the cool thing with the transporter is that they know where the sheep are, right? Like that's what they do for a living. So they'll drop you off at an area where there's sheep. Where you go do it on your own, sometimes you might get in a pocket where there's not any sheep, or you might not even be in a sheep area. Probably not. That's probably not the case, but those guys know where the sheep are. So I've always heard that guys generally get good results because at least they're in sheep country. It doesn't mean they're going to get a sheep, but they're going to be in the right area. And like you said, and then I think
Yeah, that's
River
right.
Jet
Yeah.
is who you guys go
Yeah.
with, right? Yeah. So for listeners, the big one out of BC here is River Jet Adventures. Kevin Willis owned it before,
Jason
and now
Palfy.
it's,
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
Jason that owns it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jason runs that outfit, and very established outfit, and they do a good job, right? And they don't. It's not like they drop off like 6 parties in one drainage, right? I think
They
pretty
are
careful
very
about
they're
what they
very
do
good
with
about
aren't they?
that. So Jason does, for the sheep opener. There's basically 2 river systems that he transports in. It's the Musquaw is the main one, and then you've got the branches off to the Shoshone. So he takes 2 groups in. He'll do a group and drop them off on opener for one or the other first on one day, and then he comes back, takes the second load out. And he's not dropping guys at the same place, but like I said, you can't control what the other resident hunters or the outfitters are doing. So Jason will tell you got to have he's got you have plan A that you tell him kind of where you want to go, or he'll offer you some advice. And then there's plan B, C, D, and E that you figure out on the fly if you're pulling up to your drop point and there's a boat parked there or something like that. But there's so much country up there. You look at that river system, the networks we have in BC, you can go just about anywhere.
Well, and that's just it too. If you end up in an area and someone's in that area, you just hike further, right? You just got to put the boot leather on, and you're going to find a drainage that there's no hunters. It's not like there's hunters in every single drainage. You just got to put the effort in. And yeah, you might have to hike 2 days back from the lake, but then you're hunting by yourself. And anytime I've gotten to a lake and there's been somebody there, it's just like, yeah, you just got to hike for a couple of days, and then you got the place to
we
yourself.
had the
So
same
it's
thing
not that
happen
bad,
to
right?
us. The risk you run in Region 6 when you're flying in is you've got different air services that are dropping groups of guys. So you might call your charter service, pick one, whether it's Clapan or BC Yukon. You pick your lake, and they say, all right, we don't have anyone else on there, and then you fly in and 2 other charters have dropped guys there. Well, we ran into that 2 years ago, and we just landed at the lake. The beauty of landing at a lake is you're more than likely landing right in sheep country in the Alpine or very close to it, and you just try to figure out which way those guys went, and you go the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay, so for guys that are looking at maybe doing a transporter on a jet boat, what are we looking for booking? Like I know with the float plane guys, you got to book early. Like if you're booking now, good luck. But certainly guys will book in January, February, and that sort of
Well,
thing.
I
What
can
are you
only
looking
tell you
for
what
for
I
a
do,
transporter?
and that's usually, I think Riverjet will start taking bookings at the end of the hunting season, usually in October. And I pretty much reserve my spot right then. Because again, we're going in for opener. So I think that, he'll take 7 or 8 guys or so on a boat, all different camps and whatnot. So my suggestion is, book as early as possible. If not, just give them a call because, Jason runs that river every day for a couple of months. So he can usually squeeze you in. I don't think getting the transportation is usually not the issue so much as getting a spot, right? Finding the right place. So yeah, it's certainly not as restrictive as the charters, right, for sure.
Yeah. And I guess one thing, Chuck, let's just touch a little bit about on this is that a lot of guys are like, well, I could just get my own jet boat and then I have that flexibility. I can go where I want. I want to do all that stuff. And there's a whole bunch of issues with that. There's logistics issues. Those guys have fuel caches all along the river. Guys that do this successfully, that hunt these, especially the further you get away from the main areas where you're dropping your boats, they're literally going like dozens / hundreds of miles up these river areas, and they've got fuel caches along the way. So that's an issue. And then some of these rivers are freaking dangerous, man. Like, how many have you seen? Many crashes? Along
personally,
the river
that, we haven't seen any, but every year when we go up there, just talking to Kevin in the past and Jason now. One of the services Riverjet offers is boat rescues, and that keeps them busy. They do a lot of things other than hunters, and you're dead right. And the other thing is that those rivers the conditions change overnight. You get a dry stretch leading up to, especially up to opener or after, and all of a sudden, what was a foot of water is now 2 inches, and you get, log jams and all kinds of shit. So yeah, you're right. First of all, anybody who owns a jet boat themselves and runs it up those rivers, my hat's off to them just because of that in itself. You look at the local guys north of, northern BC that are up there all the time. They know those rivers they're like the back of their hand, and super dangerous. But it's that's the key to access if you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key takeaway is just be careful. I've heard of so many stories. Last year we were up hunting and we were along one of the rivers. I won't give away my secret spots here, but one of the we ran into the outfitter, and they get Riverjet to bring their guys in, and there was 2 or 3 boats that were submerged and lost in the river. Nobody was killed, but that there's just a litany of accidents along those rivers in northern BC, and if you don't know what you're doing, it's not the place you want to be. So it's a great to have Jason and Riverjet and use those guys because they know exactly what they're doing. No different. Guys think, I'll just buy my own airplane and fly in on a hunt, and it's a great idea if you're good and you're like you put the effort in, you figure it out. But there's been a few train wrecks along the way.
And the other one that I hear good things of is these. There's a couple other operations I think that run the packer option on horseback, and I think that's something I've never done, but it's on the bucket list for sure. I think it'd be great. I've done a couple of horseback hunts for elk and things like that in the past, but I would think that would be about as close as I would be able to afford for sure on going on an outfitted hunt. The barrier to entry, like you said earlier, for a guided hunt is the outfitter willingness to take you on or take a resident into his area. And then there's also that $60,000 plus barrier dollars that you have to spend to get it done, right?
Yeah, and I don't think they charge that for, they'll take a Canadian resident, probably, I'm guessing. I've heard of cheaper cases, or certainly a BC resident. But the issue is that, they're kind of giving away their secret spots, which is, that's their livelihood, right? So I get it. I can understand why. But that said, there's outfitters there that will work with you, and they'll try and find areas and support you. And I've talked to some outfitters, that just don't want anything to do with residents. I've heard other ones that say, give me a call, and, I don't want to see you when I'm out there, and I'll send you to an area that's away from my area. But, I guess the big thing is as residents or whatever, we need to be respectful of what's going on there with the outfitters too, and trying to find an area that works for both, right? Like, we're both on the landscape. Let's do what we can to support each other. And I've had some really good contact and dialogue with guides and outfitters over the years, and then there's others that they're not too happy to see.
Yeah, exactly.
That is too.
At the end of the day, it's their livelihood, and you understand that, but it's also public land, and it's massive area. Lots of room.
Yeah, there's a lot of room out there for everybody. Yeah, well said. Just for our listeners, anyone that's interested in maybe booking a trip with Riverjet or any other that run. I don't, like I said, I think that Jason's the only one that runs that outfit. But what do you look for costs? Like what? Like I guess it depends how far up the river you go. But what's an average cost? I have no idea.
Off the top of my head, I think for a sheep hunt, I think he's in that $1,800 to $2,000 range, depending on his fuel cost per person. Which I think it's right. Certainly worth it when you look at what's involved. So it's it's not outrageous, right? I mean, I don't think it's all that different if you were splitting a plane with a couple guys, two guys on an air charter. Just depends how many air miles you're flying, I guess. But so that's the range.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's affordable, right? And it's a good option because, again, I know they do drop. They're pretty careful where they drop guys off. They're going to put them in sheep country. If you're going sheep hunting or elk hunting or whatever, they're going to send you into the right area. They're not going to send you an area where there's no sheep
for sure,
elk or whatever you're after. So it's pretty good in that regard. Yeah, certainly.
And then crashing
your own jet boat. Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So, are you a member of the Less Than One Club? You got a ram on your belt?
I'm not an official member of the Less Than One Club. I am a member of WSF. I do not have a sheep under my belt yet. Have been on one successful sheep hunt. I think it was the second year that we did a trip. I took two buddies in, and we managed to get the one fella really nice, broomed off, real old. Well, not really old. He was actually aged at 9, but very mature. Big, heavy ram, and it was great. I could have shot that ram. My concern with it was I was shooting on age and not on full curl, and I'm still very concerned about that. But he had all the characteristics. He had, he was the boss of the ram. I think on that trip, on that particular trip, we had a drainage that had close to 40 sheep in it. 40 rams, I should say, in that drainage. And there was a lot of young up-and-comers. And we watched this guy for 5 days. And these guys, so I sent the two boys up to kind of watch, get in position on this sheep. And I sat down at camp and kind of glassed and watched the whole operation. These sheep, actually, it's a cool story. These guys were bedded down on the side of a grassy slope, and the sheep were feeding there every day. We had them patterned. And the band of rams fed right up just below them and then bedded literally within the closest one I think was 6 or 7 yards from these guys. So they laid on their backs all day in the sun and the grass getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. And the big ram was like 70 yards below them, just out of sight all day. So I was in reaching them saying, like, whatever you could do, guys, don't move. They actually had a banana ram walk right up to one of the guys when he was sleeping and started licking the bottom of his boot when he was walking by. So it was like last light. The big guy stood up about a half hour before legal shooting light was up. And at 70 yards, these guys were able to put a spotting scope on him and spend like half an hour with him broadside, both sides, and like check, double check, triple check, and then made the decision he was legal and shot him. And then we packed out of there and got him CI'd. And I think the CI said, depending on which CI was aging him, he was a minimum of 9 years old. So really nice ram, and it was a super fun hunt. And that was my first experience with a successful sheep hunt. And it was this fella's first ram. So it was a really cool trip, yeah. One for the books.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, so, there's no secret. There's been some issues with underage rams shot and all. How do you find yourself when you're in a scenario? You got 40 rams on the landscape. You're looking at them. You've never killed a ram. You kind of get, you get itchy. You have this, like, you want to be successful. We're kind of driven to be successful. How do you manage your emotion when it comes to that? And how do we sort of articulate that, patience? So, you've been hunting, you said
pretty close,
40 years or something like that or more. And you're still, you're still showing that restraint. How do we sort of articulate that, how important that is, and how do you manage that?
That's a really good question. For me, it was the anxiety of making a mistake at that level, taking an animal's life when it may or may not be legal just isn't worth it to me. This is there's and I look at it, I was when I did that trip I was 52, so I'm 55 now, yeah, so 52, and I looked at it and went, in my mind I was thinking, I'm going to sheep hunt until I cannot get my ass up this mountain. Like, I'm going to keep coming back until I find the ram. And so I held back, and I said, guys, you go for it if you want, but I'm not shooting on age. For me, it's, you have to make a mature decision when you're out there in the field. And I wasn't in it for glory. I wasn't in it to have a nice Instagram post. For me as a hunter, and I'm trying to teach my kids the same, and they all understand and respect that it's not about just killing an animal and holding it up for a photo. That's very cool, and we'll talk about that later when we get into the platform. The grip and grin photos are great, but it's all about how you get to that photo, in my opinion, versus the photo itself. So for me, it was the adventure, learning how to sheep hunt, being able to sit there for a week and glass, 30 plus rams, watch them. If there was 3 nights in a row, right before sunset, that we were sitting having our dinners watching rams fight, smash butt heads and, knock each other around. We watched them, interact with each other the entire week. And for me, it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. So that was what it was about for me. And so my advice to young hunters, especially young hunters, you guys got your whole entire life to kill a legal ram. Don't take a chance. If it's too close to call, just, put your gun on your shoulder and walk to another ridge and start glassing.
Yeah, great advice for sure, Chuck. Okay, so let's segue a little bit into that now. Let's talk about what's going on with the new platform. So, kind of introduce us to Spike Camp and what's involved there, and because there's a whole bunch of stuff that we just talked about that tie into that.
Yeah, sure. So, one of my kids, Blake, the middle one, who's my sheep hunting partner, he works in the digital marketing space, which, if you ask me to describe that, I'm the wrong guy to ask, but his forte is everything tech and, website design, the marketing side, the whole bit. And him and I have been talking about a project for the last few years, and you're aware of this, but a couple years ago when all those short sheep were shot, it kind of angered both of us that, we were making our community look really bad. Like the sheep, especially the sheep hunting community, was ridiculous. And I think I heard Bill say at the sheep show that the final number for that year was like around 40 rams that were taken back, which is ridiculous. Or is it 30? I can't remember. It was a lot, way more than we.
Yeah, I don't think it was quite that high. And then some of those rams,
true.
there were other reasons they were
Meat
confiscated too,
or whatever.
Like you guys. Yeah, but regardless, the number
and
was
if you look, I think
high,
if you look
100%.
for the last couple of years since then, it's drastically reduced. So we're doing a good job. But Blake came back and within a couple hours created a little website on aging sheep, just more or less to try to get something out there, and just basically pooled all the resources together. So we looked at that and talked about it, and there's a number of reasons why Spike Camp came about, and the other side of it was. We look at the resources that are out there for the hunting community today, with regards to forums and Facebook pages and things like that. The forums themselves and Facebook are very restricted and highly censored in some cases, and there's no real filter as far as the community goes itself. So we thought, what if we were to create an online community, a network that's available for hunters, and in order to be part of that community, the hunters themselves need to be conservationists first. And so, we came up with this plan to create the network, find the platform, and then open it up to hunters that are members of conservation groups and we chose wildlife conservation groups first and foremost because there's so many groups out there. So the first groups that we chose to be sort of partnering with, if you will, are Wild Sheep Society BC, Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance, and also the Wild Sheep Foundation of Alberta chapter.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about the platform itself. So how is this different? What's it? So let's say for your Facebook or your Instagram user, what's Basecamp can offer that these other two programs are?
So first of all,
won't
like I said, in order to be a member of Spike Camp, you need to be an active member of one of these groups that we choose to support. So when you register, you go through. There's a landing page, which is a website. Just sort of describes what we're about, shows the partnership groups that we have there, the conservation groups. You hit the login button or the join now button. So you will fill out, basically you go through an application process and you disclose which groups you're a member of. And then we will verify through our contacts at those groups just to make sure those members are actually active. And then once you're on the platform, it's kind of, I guess to try to describe it, it's basically a combination of a discussion forum, Facebook with some traits of Instagram. It's got all kinds of things. So you go in and you're automatically subscribed to the general hunting space, which is a discussion topic, the conservation space, and I think it's the help and support. I'd have to check with Blake on that because I didn't actually do it myself. But once you're in, there's a ton of discussion topics that you can subscribe to, and you basically create a feed. So then, your feed will update you. There's actually an app as well, which is part of it. We actually use a platform. It's a private network platform commercial that's out there. It's called Mighty Network. We demoed 4 or 5 different platforms before we settled on this one. And like anything, unless you're building it from scratch, it's not going to be 100% perfect. But this one, the Mighty Networks platform, checked most of the boxes that we wanted. So once you're on there, there's all kinds of things you can do. Very easy to post photo and video. So we encourage guys to do that. Get in there and share your stories. You can private message each other. So there's a message platform in there as well. We can do live video and sort of like the live feeds, if you will, if we wanted to have a seminar or a guest speaker on there. Realistically, Kyle, the sky's the limit with what we can do with this platform. And there's a section there for including some sponsors. We haven't sold anything yet because we haven't got the product completely up and running. So yeah, I mean that's really it. So Spike Camp is, like I said, it's available to hunters as long as they're part of one of those groups. And we may or may not add the qualifying groups. We might add some more as time goes on. But we're kind of working in a scaled mode where we're being super careful. We're trying to do everything right. We don't want to make any mistakes. Kind of a one-shot deal when you start something like this.
Okay, so I've had the luxury of being part of this. Chuck, you brought me in a while back now, and I've been on the platform for certainly a few weeks, if not a month or so. And the one thing I notice about there's a lot of mentorship. There's a lot. It's very inclusive, very supportive. And talking to you, it seemed like that was one of the objectives, right? You wanted this safe space where people could post their pictures, feel comfortable, ask questions, support one another. Let's talk about sort of what kind of your vibe or culture you guys are trying to create there.
Yeah, I mean you nailed it. It's certainly inclusive. When we started the beta testing phase, we went out and kind of handpicked people that we knew in the space and a wide range of people, right? So we had sheep hunters. We've got guys that are some fairly new hunters in there. We had a wide range of people get on there to kind of test it out, and then we expanded it a little bit further to include some of your team, some of the Wild Sheep executive got in. And if you look at the platform, like it's basically got a menu on the side when you're on it, and it's got the categories, the discussion topics, which are, that's what I call, that's the meat and potatoes of the platform, where you've got a hunting gear section, you've got a sheep hunting section, a goat hunting space, guns and handling, archery, international hunting. And that's the fun stuff. That's where guys are going to talk. They're going to share pictures and ask questions. We can do polls and surveys, all kinds of fun stuff. You get a little farther down, there's a small section for classifieds where you can post an ad for hunting gear or guns or whatever you're selling. But the real important part for us, and I think the real exciting section, is the hunter resources section, which we're developing now. And right now we've got some placeholder spaces in there. So if you click on the hunter resources section, that'll pop up. There'll be a menu for hunting podcasts. So we've got, of course, Talk of Sheep is up there, and some of our other favorite podcasts are listed in there. There's a space for education and safety, and that's going to be something we're going to develop. So we'll have some interesting information and resources in there for people getting started in hunting. There'll be links to providers that will offer core classes and first aid and all kinds of things. There's a news, content, and events section, which we're kind of allowing other groups like BHA is in there, and they're advertising some of their events. So we're trying to support and unify all the groups that are in our game. One of the things we're going to be looking at doing as the hunting season rolls around, it's probably going to start with black bear hunting. The real gold on as far as Spike Camp goes is the membership that we have. When you look at the members that we're registering for Spike Camp, these are, put your money where your mouth is type of people. They've already paid a significant amount of money to become a member of one, or in most cases, many of the conservation groups. And so those hunters that are in there, for the most part, are experienced hunters that have a lot to offer. If you look at the member list, and that's the other thing that we have is when you register, I guess you could put a fake name in, but everybody puts their own name in with a profile picture. But if you look at the roster of hunters that are members just today, we have about 100 and just close to 160 members now. There's a lot of stone cold killers on that list that have a ton of experience. So, for example, black bear season is right here, right now. I'm going to send a message out to the group, the membership later on this week, to try to get some, black bear experts in, and we're going to do Q&As on black bear hunting. So we're going to do a survey on questions and get some questions in from folks, and then have the experts answer. As we get closer to sheep season, we're gonna have a section completely dedicated to aging sheep. And again, we want to do some live events, work with the Wild Sheep Society, get some experts in there, maybe some bios, get some opinions, maybe do a live event. We're going to have that space. Once it's in there, it's going to be there forever, and we'll try to get as many resources from all the different areas, Alaska, Montana, anybody who's got information on aging sheep, and then of course our own BC resident and experts that we have. So, the idea is as much as we can, we want to get experienced hunters on there, but we also want the new guys and girls coming in. Don't be afraid to ask a question. One of our policies is you're not going to get flamed and you're not going to get shot down for asking a question. And this site is not about politics. We have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to racism and all the bad shit that you see in all these other forums and Facebook and everything else. So yeah, that's kind of where we're headed.
Very cool. Well, first of all, I guess thank you. Thank you for creating this safe space, and for obviously our members and the Goat Alliance and WSFAB. These are people that really care about the resource. So it's really cool to unite us with that purpose in mind. Because there's, you look at, for example, a lot of these pages that are out there on, and whatever the case may be on Facebook or whatever, that they're not a lot of those people aren't part of the conservation organizations. They're hunters or maybe not even hunters, which is fine. But a lot of them aren't sort of steeped in the space. So having that connection is really cool, and kind of coming as the, I guess, the common theme that brings everyone together. I think that's really, really cool. And then just to get a comment about Spike Camp, the one thing I love about it is there's such a great resource, right? So it's like you said, click on the bear hunting stuff. You go to the sheep hunting page on Facebook, for example. Yeah, there's a ton of resources there, but, try and find something about backpacks, or try and find something about, it's like, good luck, and you scroll for days trying to find that crap, right? So unless you happen to be lucky and stumble across it. But with Spike Camp, you just jump on, click on bear hunting, and it's specific there, or, gear, or whatever the case may be. And you guys have done a really good job of that. So it's really user friendly. It's definitely, it's not just another forum. Exactly. It's not a Facebook. It's not Instagram. It's completely unique, and I think in a good way, for sure. So I really like it. I think you guys have done a really good job. A lot of thought has gone into it. So where do you see it going from here? So you got, now you're into the hundreds of members. You're just opening the floodgates now.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the scalability of Spike Camp. So our mission, for us, it's not about quantity as much as it is about the quality. And when it comes to the content, at the end of the day, the real gold is the membership, and that's where all the knowledge and the experience comes in. And Blake and I are just the incubators right now. We're just trying to get this thing going. The long-term plan is this becomes, an entity of its own, where Blake can spend a lot of time. Ideally, in a perfect world, I'd like to see him full-time managing the content and driving. It doesn't all have to be about marketing as much as when you say marketing, I look at the customer. It's unique because the customer that we have is the membership right now. And the resource that we have is also the membership, right? So it's all the hunters. And once hunters are comfortable sharing their stories and their experience, it's going to continue to grow. And I think with our mission being, let's try and promote membership to the conservation partners, that's going to push. So if somebody comes to us, and we had quite a few, I don't want to say quite a few, but we have already had people apply and say, hey, I'm not a member of any of these groups. Would you accept, a BC Wildlife Fed membership or a BHA? And we politely tell them, we recognize those groups and respect them, but for now, we want you to be part of a wildlife conservation group. So here's the three that we support. Go get a membership. And I think in the first weekend, we had at least one life membership sign up, and we had a few people. We don't want to be the membership police. That's not our goal. But at the end of the day, what we want is, we want Spike Camp to be known, like you said, as a safe, inclusive environment for hunter conservationists to be free and able to share information, share their pictures, ask questions, suggest things that we can put on the platform. That's something else. I mean, right now, everything that you see there, as far as the menu board goes on the side, it's all driven by just ideas that Blake and I have had, and some of our friends have helped us with some of that content. But you have to be careful, I'm learning, with these social media platforms. They'll take a life of their own, and you have to be careful what that life looks like. And for us, conservation is first, and just a safe environment for hunters. Because if you go on some of these other platforms and you post a picture, let's say you post a picture of a sheep and you've shot it and you're holding it, and there's a little bit of blood on the face that you didn't get before you put the photo up. Throw that on Instagram. You're quite likely, more than likely, going to get that sensitive content banning. You're probably going to get somebody commenting and trashing you for putting that on there. That shit's not going to happen at Spike Camp. And we have a contest right now that we started, just a small contest, $50 Cabela's gift card, grip and grin contest. Show us your pictures, guys. Get on there. And we've got all kinds of pictures on there. We've got sheep, we've got elk, we've got moose, we've got turkey. We got all kinds of stuff on there already. And it's just great because people are embracing it. They're loving it. And yeah, we just want to continue to grow, in that direction.
Right on. Okay, Chuck. So somebody wants to be part of this program. You kind of covered all this now, but let's just to sum it up. Somebody wants to get involved. What do they need to do? Let's say, tell us about a member. Tell us about a non-member. So somebody's coming to the site. They've never been on the platform before. They're not a member of the three organizations.
So if they're not a member and they're just curious, you just just type in spikecamp.com and you'll go to our landing page. And on that landing page, you'll find the links to the conservation partners. So if you know you're not a member of any of them, then you might as well just either go direct to those websites, join up, get a membership, or go to our website, pick one. You might want to go onto each website and, each organization's site and just see which organization's right for you. If you live in Alberta, maybe it's WSFAB, or if you're not a sheep hunter and you want to support the Goat Alliance, then you go to their site. So once you've done that, you do your registration. You'll disclose which group you're in, and we will verify. And as soon as you are registered, you will get a personal message from either Blake or I welcoming you to the site, giving you some suggestions on how to navigate the site. The other thing I didn't touch on, which I forgot about, is we have a help section on there as well. And that help section has a series of videos that Blake put together on, just showing the basics on how to do all kinds of different things, how to post a story or an article, how to subscribe to the feed and all of that. And then once you're in, just figure out which spaces you're interested in, subscribe to as many as you can, and just start to engage. One of the things we've noticed, ironically, is the group of hunters that we have in this group, obviously targeting mountain hunting primarily. So most everybody who's a member of WOSS or the Goat Alliance is probably a mountain hunter. We're all pretty tight-lipped when it comes to sharing stuff. So it's a little slow to get the engagement going, but we're starting to see some real traction with it. And like I said, we're trying all kinds of different ideas to kind of trigger people to start to communicate a bit more. And got to remember too, it's not it's just bear season just opened in Turkey, so we expect that by July, August, hopefully we have a few thousand members, and the thing takes a life of its own.
Awesome, Chuck. Okay, that's fantastic. So we'll put that in the show notes for people to get signed up. And if you want some good karma, go and sign up to all three organizations, right? Wild Sheep BC, Wild Sheep Foundation Alberta, and RMGA. So all three good organizations. I'm a life member for all three. I love all three of those organizations. But if you're going to be picky, it's cheap, right? What's a membership? $50, $55, $60, and that gets you the subscription to onto Spike Camp. Plus, you're supporting conservation and all the great work that's going on there. So, anything to wrap it up, Chuck? Any last comments?
I don't think so, Kyle. That pretty much covers it. I just want to thank you personally and your team for all the support. You guys jumped in right away on the the request for help and the beta testing side of things, and we're getting a lot of engagement from all the Wild Sheep Society family members, and certainly appreciate it. We're going to be at the golf tournament. We're sponsoring a hole, so Blake and I are going to hang out there and meet a bunch of Wild Sheep members as they go passing through. So looking forward to seeing everybody there.
Yeah, awesome. And, like some people might say, well, how are you guys, or why are you guys involved in this? And the thing for us is anyone that's out promoting conservation, like you guys are, like this, the very heart of Spike Camp is conservation. And, anyone that doesn't want to be part of that is got to have their head examined, pardon my language. But I just think it's a great platform. I love, what you guys are putting out there in terms of the inclusivity, a safe space for hunters, a resource, mentorship. And I will say that Blake put out that sheep aging website a while ago. And when I think you shared
Michael
it.
Survey. I think we sent it to Mike. Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness, like this.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was like, wow, this is a fantastic resource. And right away, I was like, oh my goodness, like we need to get Blake involved in what we're doing here. And so just seeing that, I just had a lot of confidence right from the get-go. And then just everything that you've done to Chuck in our community which is our next little segue, and I want to just touch on that. So, Chuck, you donated a rifle around the Tom Leonard Search and Rescue raffle we did. So this was a year ago. Do you want to just give us the high-level notes on that? Just give us a 2-minute view on what the Tom Leonard Search is and why you're involved
very
in
happy
it.
to talk about that. So I've been following that story for many, many years. On one of the local hunting forums in BC, there's a dedicated segment, and I give credit to the owners of that forum for leaving it up there for all these years. And every year prior to hunting season, you start to see activity in that segment on that platform. And I can't remember exactly what month or date it was, but we were traveling. I think we were coming back from a hunt somewhere, Blake and and I played your Talk of Sheep episode with Tammy Leonard. We listened to it on the road, and honestly, it was just gut-wrenching. I'm a father of 3. My kids I got one at 30 years old and 2 that are in their mid-20s. And just listen to that story, and all I could think about was, what if it was me? What if I didn't come home and my wife was left to raise, these 3 kids? People get killed or die of cancer, and that's just absolutely tragic and terrible. But when that happens, there's closure, right? Somebody passes, you have a grieving period, and you get past it. In the case of Tom, it's unknown. It's quite obvious that he's probably not with us anymore, but there's no closure. And then when we got back, there was mention in the podcast of a YouTube video that his daughter had posted. And I watched that video, and I just literally just said, I got to do something. And if you recall, I picked up the phone. I'd never met you before, and I reached out and just said, hey, Kyle, we got to do something. We got to get a search organized. And so, yeah, I had a gun. And I'm really good friends with Gary Flock, who's obviously, he's a member of WSS, and Don Lynham is a buddy of mine. And really admire what those guys have done over the years with the constant donations done every year, just gun after gun after gun, and they raise money. And so I thought, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to give a rifle to this cause. I want the proceeds to go specifically to funding the search for Tom. And, obviously that rifle raffle sold out. I don't know, was it 3 hours, 3.5 hours, something like that? It was ridiculous.
It was 6 hours.
Amazing.
It was the quickest we've ever sold a raffle in the history of the society. We sold $20,000.
Yeah, I mean that right there.
Hours.
That speaks to our community. I would venture to guess that almost all the members we have today in Spike Camp probably bought a ticket. So yeah, I mean, once that gun was gone and sold, and the money was raised, then the professionals took over. Joey Prevost and his team, and Dave from the Search and Rescue and up there in Terrace. I mean, those guys are the heroes in this whole thing. Flying in there and doing all the grid searching. And honestly, I hadn't never met Joey in person until the the Life Member Breakfast at the show a few weeks back, and him and I sat at the table together and we just talked about it. And honestly, it's not over. As you know, they haven't concluded any real solid findings there. They did discover some things. At this point, it's not really being disclosed too much as far as what they found or what the next steps are. But they didn't find Tom, as far as we know. And I think there's still a need, or at least a willingness from the community to get back out there and see if we can find him. The question now is, what does Tammy and the family want us to do? Because it's their decision. I think honestly, if they're interested in pursuing another search, I'm sure there's enough of us in this community. We could easily turn around and raise enough funds to do another search, and I would be behind that, and so would Spike Camp 100%.
Awesome. Yeah, so the proceeds from that raffle, we raised $20,000. We took the proceeds, and that went directly to Terra Search and Rescue. We cut checks directly to them, went to helicopter time and logistics and getting in there, and they conducted a multi-day search, and they unfortunately were not successful in recovering Tom or finding his remains. So, they sort of that saga continues. For anyone that's interested, you can go back to listen to that podcast that we did with Tammy Leonard, which is Tom's widow, and that was in episode 45. Yeah. So that's a great listen. It's heart wrenching. There was a lot of tears on that bloody podcast, and your heart goes out to her family. But anyway, Chuck, I just want to commend you and your I guess your heartfelt donation and the support you gave that, because without that raffle, we couldn't have done that, and that search, they needed money. They came to us and they reached out to us early on and said, hey, would you guys support this? And we made a token donation. We obviously had limited resources. I think we made a $500,000 donation towards it, which was way too inadequate, but this raffle allowed them to do that, and without that there wasn't the money there for it. So hats off to you, my friend. Amazing, and just you're doing great stuff in our space, and we love members.
Well,
like,
thanks a lot.
Chuck,
It's like I said,
appreciate you.
We're here to drive conservation and membership to our partner groups, and we're extremely happy and proud to be part of the Wild Sheep family, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Chuck, and I envision having you back on and maybe get you kicked out of the Less Than One Club this fall. We can talk about your sheep hunt, and better yet, we'll even talk about what's going on with Spike Camp and the great
sounds good. Thank you very much, Kyle.
Appreciate you.